to the Wandering Wingshooter. I prefer the lonely places, wandering behind a pair of bird dogs in search of what's over the next hill. My passion for upland hunting has led me to multiple states. These travels have allowed me to see the beauty of this great land and meet some interesting people. I hope to introduce you to many of these people and encourage you to look for what's over your next hill. Today I'm talking with Ben Edinger of Grand Haven, Michigan. Ben is owner and CEO of T-Sox Engineering and is an admitted adult onset bird hunter. The podcast, as always, is sponsored by Pipe Gear. An upland hunter who hunts hard needs clothing that is light, makes hunting easier, not harder. An upland hunter is always on the move and always thinking about his next move. He needs clothing that can move with him, clothing that doesn't hold him back or weigh him down. Pipe Gear is designed for upland hunters who are always on the go and always dreaming about their next hunting trip. Visit pipegear.com to find the best upland hunting clothing you will ever wear. Follow Pipe Gear on Facebook and Instagram. And Ben, how are you doing this evening?
Doing well this evening, Ryan. Good to talk to you.
Now, why don't you tell people a little about yourself?
Well, I am married to a wonderful wife, Lydia. I've got a couple kids. They're 6 and 9. As you said, I'm a midlife, late onset bird hunter. I did some bird hunting when I was young with my father. Then I went to school, went to college, got a couple jobs, did some different things, and then I got introduced to pointing dogs, and it's just been a slow burn from there. About 10 years ago, got my first Brittany, which is my first real bird dog, and I think it's been escalating on from there. In my day job, I'm a design engineer, and every other chance I get, I try to be a bird hunter.
Well, and I've always been fascinated because that engineering stuff is so foreign to what I do. And I know you run your own firm, and you've explained to me in the past what it is that you do, but tell me again exactly, how you put bread on the table.
I'm a mechanical engineer by training. I've got a couple degrees in that. And then what I do is product development work. So a lot of stuff with companies where they have an idea, and we work the process from designing mechanical prototypes, proving out concepts, and then a lot of time into finding tooling options and suppliers to fabricate the parts. Then they assemble them and take things all the way into production until it's something you might see in your house or on the store shelves when you go out.
So if I had this idea about a wingding that I think everybody would love, and I need somebody to tell me what to make it out of and how to most efficiently make it, you would be the guy that I could go to and contract to answer those questions for me.
Absolutely. From a sketch on a napkin all the way out to something that's in a package ready to go. I've worked in all those steps, all on the mechanical side. If you had something that needed electronics inside it or computer software, we'd have to find some other people to help out. But on the mechanical side, it's me.
And how cool, because like people come to you with their dreams. They've got these ideas that they're trying to convert into a product that people want to buy. And probably got a bunch of their finances all tied up in that. And they bring that to you to help them make that dream a reality. I bet that is so cool.
It is. It's a lot of fun. You get to see something go from an idea and a concept into, a lot of times the most exciting part is just proving something's going to work. And then the real work starts from there to make it a product that they can sell.
Oh, yeah, that's fun. And you graduated from Western Michigan, I believe, is what I read.
Yep. Got my undergrad from Western Michigan, then my grad degree at Penn State, both in mechanical engineering.
And your Nittany Lions are playing some good football this year.
They are so far. We had an interesting one this last weekend with the University of Michigan, which makes it tough since I live in Michigan. But things are rolling. We'll see how the rest of the season goes.
And you were pulling for your Nittany Lions now, weren't you?
Absolutely.
Because I tell you, I was kind of mixed emotions. I don't have a vested interest in that game at all, but on one hand, I want Michigan to win because I like Bob Zinn, and on the other hand, I want Penn State to win because I like Ben Edinger. I don't know that I ever picked a team, but I rooted for them both.
Well, you don't pick a side, and we'll just make sure to never schedule a bird camp with Bob and me on that weekend.
I bet that's a good idea. Isn't it fascinating how, I mean, it may not be to you, but I've met men and some women from all over the country. And so when I sit down on the rare Saturday afternoon that I'm not out running around with my dogs and watch football, I'm thinking about the guys that I know that are fans of each of those teams. I mean, I can't watch a Notre Dame game without thinking about Pike and Carmody.
Oh, yeah. And I find it interesting because I heard you talking about that in a previous podcast, and I can tell you that since we've started coming out to Oklahoma, my wife Lydia and I both always check on the OU scores and results before we finish up on Saturday watching football.
Yeah, and you just know I pulled out whatever hair I had left before the game was over.
Oh, yeah.
My Sooners are playing good football this year.
They got a real small number in front of their name every time I look.
And I mean, I have long since figured out that their success or failure on the football field is not evidence of my value to society, but damn, it sure feels that way.
It does, especially on Saturday. Usually by Sunday, I realize it's just a game that I'm watching.
Yeah, amen. So you and I met when you got involved with the quail lease that Brent Pike has here in Oklahoma. Is that right?
Correct. That is correct.
And you came down and hunted with me. You and your wife came down and hunted with me that first year on opening weekend, and you've been back every opening day since then. Is that right?
Yeah, we have. That's true. I think 2016 was the first one. So we've had 3 of them, and we got a 4th opening day coming up here in a couple weeks.
And I can't wait. I absolutely can't wait to see your wife.
I understand completely.
So Ben, when I first met you and hunted with you, that wasn't your first time to go bird hunting.
No, I had been bird hunting for a little while when we met. Did we meet in the Upper Peninsula at the little lodge on Trout Lake when you and Mark came up and Jason?
I think maybe that was the first time we met, was there in Michigan.
Yeah, I think we met up there, and that was just a couple weeks before the first opener in Oklahoma for us.
I think that's right.
But no, I had been bird hunting before that, but you met me in that part where you're actually starting to learn and put some pieces together as a bird hunter. I had been pretty lost before about that point in my life.
Well, and you and I were talking before we started the podcast that really your experience, I call you an adult onset bird hunter, but really your experience maybe is not that much different than my own in that regard. You started as a boy. Your dad would take you bird hunting.
Oh yeah, I mean when I was very young, I didn't get to go. I know my dad and my uncles and his friends went out. In fact, I've got a picture up in my gear room of him and my uncles and one of their friends holding up some birds from when I was a pretty little guy, and I got another picture of me on the tailgate of his Blazer in the 70s next to a pheasant when I was just 2 or 3 years old.
I'll be doggone.
And as I got to hunting age, I was just dying to go with them. But most of our hunting was right around where we lived in southwestern Michigan. There were still grouse in that area at the time. But most of it was hunting family land, just going out on a Sunday afternoon, following a couple Labradors through the woods. And from my father, I really learned that appreciation of just being outside with people that are important to you and the dogs and just how important that time is.
So you even had dogs around some when you were a boy.
Flushing, yep, we had Labradors. I grew up with a dog in the house. Always loved dogs. Always loved that idea of hunting and getting outdoors. And didn't really see a pointing dog, though, till later in life.
And was that like the big game changer? Is that what really set the hook in you, was seeing a dog on point?
I think so. I had seen one very briefly in my teenage years. My uncle got I think it was a rescue short hair that they just tried out at our house, and he rescued the dog. The guy, well, he took the dog in after the guy had rescued it. And I had seen it point, but I hadn't really realized what was going on. When I lived in California, started hunting with a guy named Craig and his buddy Bob, and they had 2 Brittany's, Floyd and Louie. And I went out to the preserve with them, and I saw those dogs work and point quail out there, and something clicked in my brain, and I said, I really like this.
And it didn't take you long to end up buying your own bird dog.
Well, funny, I kind of misled you there. It took me a long time for my life to get into a position where I could buy a bird dog.
I'll be.
Um, I was living in California, doing what I do for a living, and so I would go out, and I lived vicariously through his Brittany, Louie. I'd see Louie all the time. They lived just about a mile from me. We'd go out to the preserves. I moved back to Michigan. I was living with my folks. Life wasn't really conducive to owning a dog. Then I met this girl. She had a golden retriever. The golden retriever was the most lovable lump of stupid you'll ever meet, named Gracie. She was terrified of almost everything, especially gunfire. So Gracie was not going to be a hunting dog. After we got married and we decided we were going to get a second dog, that itch percolated back up. And I had taken my wife, when she was my girlfriend, out to California. So she had met Floyd and Louie. We'd taken them to the preserve. She loves dogs, and then just fell in love with the idea of pointing dogs and bird hunting with them after going to the preserve. And so we were married about a year when we got our first bird dog.
Happy. And when I was a boy, I mean, I hunted. My dad took us dove hunting, took us quail hunting, probably even encouraged us to hunt deer. And my brother and I were ate up with deer hunting when we were boys.
Yeah.
But like we had this fundraiser that we did for a band class, and we would sell magazines, and I always ended up buying a subscription to Bowhunter, I think it was, and later on maybe the Pointer Dog Journal. And even when I was young, I would just eat that stuff up. I would wait for the first of the month when those magazines would come in, and would just burn through those. Did you do that too?
My father, while I was growing up, he was a voracious magazine reader. He always liked magazines. He also, I didn't realize till later in life, he was contributing to the Rough Grouse Society, Ducks Unlimited, groups like that. He thought it was important to be involved in conservation. So yeah, we always had some magazines around about bird hunting or duck hunting, and I love reading those.
Like Sports Afield, and
yep.
There was. I'm trying to think. There was another kind of old time sporting magazine. It wasn't specifically hunting; it was hunting and fishing.
I loved all those.
Oh yeah, and the art and the photographs and just we get so maybe so inured to the wonderful content that you can see online now. You know, you go to Instagram, you can see all kinds of really neat photographs and videos of people with their bird hunting.
Well, I think that's today's magazines, right?
Yeah.
I joined Instagram only because I knew you and you had an Instagram account, and I'd seen some of the pictures you had going on. And now I've filled my Instagram feed with just pictures of guys and gals with their bird dogs and their bird hunting, and just it's kind of a release or an escape during the day to sit back and look at some bird hunting before I go back to work.
Yeah. Have you stumbled on any of the blogs?
I haven't stumbled on many, other than if I'm Google searching for something specific, like a problem I'm having with my dog or something I'm trying to figure out, then I do come across those.
Oh man, that guy Charlie Jordan that has that Missing Sucks blog. You need to go and read some of his stuff. It is hilarious.
I will take a look at it. I just I haven't come across him.
And then the guy interviewed last week. He's a vet in Colorado, Sean Wayman. Sean and his brother have a blog. It's called Upland Ways. And you would love it. Of course, they're chucker hunters mostly, and there's a lot of stuff about chucker hunting. I mean, a dog or some dogs and a bird and a shotgun, it's all kind of the same in a lot of ways.
Well, I punched in those two blog names in my computer while we were sitting here talking, and now I just realized I'm going to lose several hours of my evening reading.
Oh, it's some cool stuff. Charlie's stuff is mostly really hilarious. Not that you ever miss. But
well, you got me on video missing plenty, so.
so you grow up in a home where hunting's a part of the culture and where you're allowed to do that, and encouraged to do that. You got a dad that's obviously concerned about wildlife conservation and exposes you to all kinds of really good outdoor literature. Um, if you're like me, when you went off to college and started trying to figure out how you're going to make a living, you had neither the time nor the money to keep a bird dog and be involved in that particular hobby.
I didn't. I was thinking about that just this last weekend because I was with a couple of buddies, and a couple of weeks ago, all my old college roommates got together, and I realized how little hunting we did. Now it's interesting that we all grew up with hunting in our background and ended up living together in college, but we were busy just trying to get through school. The one thing I would do from time to time is go meet up with my dad. He didn't have a dog anymore, but we'd do some float hunting for ducks, and you could jump hunt them if you came into these little bays and estuaries, and so it was a lot of fun. But I didn't do much of it during college.
And then once you got a job or got to the point where financially you weren't worried about keeping a roof over your head, then you started looking around for hobbies. Would be, I guess, a good way to say it.
That is a real good way to say it. When we didn't hunt much in college, we would do some backpacking and other things to stay in the outdoors. Grad school, I was at Penn State, and that's one of the central hot spots for fly fishing. So I did pick up trying to learn fly fishing there. And then when I moved to California and was working out there, one of my friends, Craig, had those Brittany's, and that's kind of nosed me back into the bird hunting thing. And like you said, you start to have the means to do some things so you can actually afford to go out and hunt from time to time.
Well, and you've heard me expound on this. I know you have, but I think that we're kind of on the verge of a little bit of a surge in upland hunting numbers. I think there's lots of people out there that have had that experience that you have, and are having. And really that kind of is parallel to my own personal experience. And that those men that are getting to be 30, 35 years old, they've got professional jobs, they're fairly secure, and they find themselves looking around for a hobby they want to be involved in, and they see some of that wonderful content that's out there on Instagram or Facebook or these blogs, and they think, oh, hell, I want to do that. That looks like a lot of fun.
You know, I hope so. I hope we're seeing more people come into the sport. It sure feels like it. I have one of my clients is a company down in Western Michigan, and I was walking through one day and I noticed that some of the cubicles had hunter safety ribbons on them. And I started talking to these, I shouldn't call them kids. They're young folks, just like you said, around late 20s, early 30s. They're engineers, and they'd all decided to go out and take hunter safety because they were interested. And we talked some more, and I started explaining what bird hunting was. And then last spring, I actually took them out to a local preserve, and we put some pheasants and some chuckers out, and I took the pointing dogs, and they shot fairly well, and they brought home some birds. Next thing I know, this young couple that was there, they're married. They've got a down payment down on a German Shorthair pointer pup, and we're going to go out again this Saturday afternoon. I'm going to take them bird hunting again. So I'm hoping we got a couple more joining the fold.
Absolutely. That's so cool. And I really think that happening in a lot of ways in metropolitan areas all over the United States. Because as I've been doing this podcast, it dawns on me that if you live in Los Angeles, you can probably drive like an hour and a half, 2 hours from downtown LA and find quail to hunt on public land. Or San Diego.
I hope so. I know when I was in California, it was more like 2 or 3 hours when I was up in the San Francisco Bay Area, but you could. People don't realize that about California. Once you leave the metro areas, it's a very low density population, and there's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, think about Denver. Dr. Wayman was talking about, he packs up and day hunts, leaves and drives a couple hours east and hunts there on the eastern face of the Rockies, hunts blue quail and pheasant and prairie chicken. You got a great amount of opportunities in Colorado itself, or hops on the interstate and drives west and meets his brother in Idaho, which really isn't that far from where he's at. And I, of course, know a lot of men that come up from the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area or Oklahoma City, Tulsa, come out to western Oklahoma and Texas Panhandle and hunt birds. Kansas City, I'm sure, Edgar Castillo that I talked to, he and his buddies leave Kansas City and drive west out into Kansas. They're hunting bobwhite quail and pheasant, and snipe, and just having a heck of a time.
Well, it's funny you're bringing that up because that was one of the realizations I went through in the last 10 years is not many of us live in prime bird hunting cover. And if you're going to do this sport, you're going to spend some time driving.
Yeah. But there's opportunities there for most people. Sometimes
within 2 hours of home, you can find something to go hunt, and you can do that in a day trip.
Yeah, and I mean, the most difficult thing for me, at least, is time-consuming and expensive is keeping dogs.
I mean, by far the most expensive.
I mean, it's hard. You have to have an appropriate place for them. You got to build a kennel, and you got to. They're like having small children, except for it's just constant. It is 10, 12 years, 15 years, oftentimes, and a lot of people don't want to be tied to that obligation. So not only is it expensive, but it's just time consuming.
Well, my father told me that was, those 10 years or so from when I saw the first Brittany to when I finally had my own. I'd been talking with him, and he kept saying, you got to understand, in a lot of ways, a dog is harder than a kid. You can't take the dog into the store with you. You can't take the dog into the restaurant. He said, they're great, but they're a lot of responsibility, and they take a lot of time and money.
Yeah, they do. And so, I mean, there's 100 different reasons why people wouldn't feel like they could keep dogs.
Yep.
Boy, then once you have one, you just never want to not have one.
Well, I was fortunate, right? When I met Lydia, she already had a dog, and she's a dog lover, and she grew up in a house with dogs. And so it was a pretty easy transition to get a bird dog and have it in the house.
So, I mean, it's not like you woke up one day at your engineering firm and said, hey, I'm bored, I need a hobby, and ran out and bought you a Brittany Spaniel and started hunting wild grouse in the Upper Peninsula.
No, I'm an engineer, Ryan. It was much more calculated than that.
So walk me through how that looked.
I had always thought I wanted to get a hunting dog just from having one when I was a kid. And we were married. We had a dog that wouldn't hunt. We didn't have a kid yet. And we kind of talked ourselves into a second dog. And then I realized I had to make a decision. So I sat down and I thought it through, and I thought about retrievers, and I thought about flushers, and I remembered all the real early mornings and all the gear involved in duck hunting, and decided maybe I'd much rather go to upland hunting. Well, if I was going to do upland hunting, there's still going to be gear, but you don't have to leave as early in the morning, and there's not the decoys, and you don't get everything wet. So logically, I was going to upland hunt, and then I decided I was really interested in this pointing dog thing. And we put some money down. We did a little internet research. We thought we were very tricky and very smart, and in hindsight now, we just kind of picked a breeder and threw some money at him because we didn't know anything else. When we picked that puppy up, we got involved. We met a trainer there. He was a wonderful gentleman. He worked at a preserve. And so that's kind of where it started, is we had this pup. It was about 6 months old. It's like, well, we got to go learn how to hunt with it, so let's go down to the preserve and figure out what's going on.
And I think that step that you're talking about, trying to be tricky and smart about, where you pick a breeder, I think that's where new people get tripped up or confused or go down a dead end path maybe as frequently as any other decision that they make.
Oh, we way overthought it.
I mean, it's hard though.
It is. It's very difficult, especially when I bird hunted when I was a kid, but that was basically starting at zero. Our mutual friends, I didn't know any of those. None of my friends at the time bird hunted, so we were really just going in cold.
Oh, and looking at that, coming from what I know now, how scary is that? I
Oh,
mean,
it was.
you're just like blindly grasping is what it amounts to.
Well, and at that time, I don't think I understood that the day you buy the pup is one of the cheapest days of ownership. So it felt like a lot of money to be gambling to hope the dog would hunt.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's amazing. And I mean, and now I know there's some things you can do when you go to pick a dog as far as identifying the genetics.
Yep.
I didn't, and I still don't really pay that much attention to pedigrees. But one thing a pedigree can do is increase the likelihood that you're going to have a dog that's got strong bird drive. You know.
Yeah, and what do they say? You'd rather pick the litter than have the pick of the litter? Are there some saying?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there really is something to that.
There is, and we just got our third dog this summer, and each dog I've put progressively less angst and thought into the decision of which breeder. You look at recommendations, and in this last one, when we got Martha, it was, I knew somebody who had a pup from the same breeder. I talked to a couple trainers that had always had good luck with pups from that breeder, so that's where I put a deposit down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, you've hunted behind my dogs. One of them's a rescue dog. I have no clue what her background is.
That's Ellie, right?
Yeah, she's half pointer, half short hair, and she's
good
all
dog.
bird dog. Yeah, I mean, and I mean, how in the world would you ever pick her? You never would. Nobody that's looking to get into bird hunting in that circumstance would ever say, "Oh, hey, that odd-looking German short-haired pointer over there with the long tail is probably the best bird dog here at the shelter." That conversation just never happens.
No, it doesn't. When I was a kid, my uncle had one of the best labs people loved, and it was a barn dog that he picked up. You know, it just happened to love to hunt. So you never know.
Well, Ellie's a bird dog member to the fact that she's just constantly in the field, and I've managed to stay out of her way. I mean, you've heard me expound on that at length. I mean, I've just managed not to screw her up because I just stay out of her way and let her figure it out on her own. And now she does a fine job.
You may have had some choice words with me to remind me to stay out of my dog's way, sharing that knowledge, and I appreciate it.
Well, that's what Ellie has taught me, is that a dog has the genetics to be a bird finder, and that mostly it's their owner that screws them up, makes them gun shy, or gets them so freaked out about bumping birds that they start blinking birds. They decide they'd rather not even bother to find them than to find them and get in trouble for not handling them correctly, you know, or they're getting handled so much that what makes them happy when they're in the field is not hunting and finding prey birds, but is keeping track of their owner to make sure that when he tells them to go left, they're going left, and when he tells them to go right, they're going right. You know, and a dog that's more worried about its handler than it is about finding birds is not a hunting dog.
Well, and there's a lot of paraphrases there for my oldest dog, who you've met. She kind of sticks close to me, and I overhandled her when she was younger, but I didn't know what I was doing. She was my first one.
Yeah, and how would you advise somebody coming into the game young to avoid that pitfall or those pitfalls?
I struggle with that, Ryan, because I'm almost afraid you have to go through that process to learn your way through it. Sometimes you can't skip steps, but I would tell people that if they want to hunt wild birds, and I'm coming to the realization that there's a huge distinction between pen-raised birds and wild birds. To think that you can teach the dog much about that at all is pretty foolish. The dog's got to just be on birds and figure it out.
And you got to stay out of their way.
And you got to stay out of their way, and I still struggle with that. I struggled with it last weekend.
And Ben, I have to tell you, man, I had beastless, you know, and my experience was much the same. I struggled over trying to identify which breeder to buy that high dollar dog from. And then when I got it, I struggled over identifying which trainer was going to be best. And then once I got my dog back from the trainer, I just overhandled her and just almost ruined her. Before I finally figured out that I need to put that whistle in my pocket, shut the hell up, and just let her go hunt.
Let her figure it out.
Yeah, and the last 4 or 5 years of Scarlett's life, she was a hunt dog. She managed to finally be patient enough with me that I gave her an opportunity to do what God made her to do. And I got better with Red. I still wasn't perfect with Red, but I got better with him. And then by the time Ellie Mae come rolling in, I'm much less apt to intervene.
Let them figure it out. It's so similar to what I've gone through with my oldest dog, right? We started on the preserve. We did a lot of repetitions. I actually did the AKC hunt testing system, so I was taking her into hunt tests. We put a master hunter title on her, like one of the highest hunt test things you can do with the AKC. I thought I had the coolest thing since sliced bread, and I took her out in the grouse woods, and we just never saw any grouse. And what I finally figured out was that she just didn't have the temperament, or hadn't learned when she was younger, to be soft and handle these birds gently. She'd run over them and they'd flush, and she'd do it 20 yards out, and I'd never see a bird or hear a bird. And I didn't even know what was going on. It was driving me bonkers, because I figured I just had found all the aspen stands in lower Michigan that didn't have any birds in them.
And so how did you overcome that? Did you, I think I know the answer, but I want you to tell me.
Well, it's I don't know if it's the answer that you're thinking, but it was a conscious decision. Talking to my wife, I said, I want to learn about hunting wild birds. This is interesting. I've had a lot of fun doing the preserve thing, but the wild bird thing is really, really intriguing me. So I said, nobody I know. All the guys I was taking hunting knew less than I did. They were my buddies, and the bird dog was a way to get together. And I said, I've got to start rubbing elbows, getting to know people that hunt wild birds. And so I started going to the Rough Grouse Society meetings here in Western Michigan. That's where I knew, well, you met recently. You met Todd, right? Out in the Dakotas. I worked with Todd. So I had met Brent a couple times because he was Todd's cousin. And met up with Brent and just started talking to these guys that they were saying, don't overtrain your dog. Let your dog figure it out. And I tried to take it to heart. Then I started hunting with some of them. And then I met you guys and started hunting and watching these dogs that weren't overtrained, but they could just figure things out. And you've met Morgan, Brent's oldest dog.
Oh, yeah.
I watched her handle some sharp tails on a training run in the Upper Peninsula, and it just kind of opened my eyes. It's like, oh, a dog actually can point wild birds. This is not impossible.
Yeah. And those sharp-tailed are spooky birds. Those dogs have to do it right. Well,
yeah, and as his Morgan held the point, my older dog came running in and flushed him, and I was like, well, I got some work to do here.
Well, and after 20 years and 5 bird dogs, I've got Dottie.
Yeah.
And Pike told me last season, the last day of the quail season last year, he said, right, that dog's going to be a hell of a bird dog if you don't screw her up. So it's still that. It's still the same as it was 20 years ago with Scarlett. I still need to just stay the hell out of her way and let her do her thing.
The odds are getting better that you won't screw her up, but I'm sure we could still figure out a way.
Oh, I tell you, and so my advice to a guy that wants to get involved in bird hunting, specifically wants to go chase wild birds, would be go buy a setter or a pointer and leave and I know this is going to irritate a bunch of really good dog guys, but leave the Continentals, leave the other, what I'm going to call softer dogs. And I think you'll agree with this one if you follow my logic. Leave those softer dogs until later when you understand how to stay the hell out of a dog's way. go buy you a pointer or a setter, hard-headed as they can be, and they're nothing but nose and bones and tail, and get somebody, either do it yourself or get somebody to teach that dog to come to you when you call every time, and to stop running and hold still when you say whoa. And then that's all the training you need. After that, go hunting every chance you get. Hunt. And when you hunt, don't be blowing on that whistle or trying to tell that dog where to go. Just let that dog take you to where the birds are and then shoot them when they find them. And
I would say that's
do you
pretty
disagree
solid
with
advice.
any of that?
I don't. I don't have enough experience to start delineating between the continentals and things like that. Now, I did just, I've got 2 Brittany's, and we just got a setter, but she's only 7 months old, so I don't have the experience yet on that decision. But you're definitely right that you train them on come back and whoa, and let them figure the rest out. Let the birds teach them. I don't know how many times I thought I could detect when my dog first entered the scent cone, and then I would whoa her. How ridiculous is that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just, yeah. You got to let that dog figure it out. Absolutely. Yep. And I mean, that's the engineering, buddy.
And the engineering has been in my way, and it still is, and it always will be.
Yeah, it will. It will be. Yeah. You'll always want to know, from a very mechanical standpoint, why that just happened.
Oh, right? I drive people nuts trying to figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think in the time I've spent with you, I've seen you come really to the understanding that it's more art than science in a lot of ways.
I am coming to internalize that, and that helps a lot, because you go, you know what? You're just not going to figure this out, but did you see what that dog just did? Wasn't that cool?
Yeah, yeah. And I've hunted behind a lot of AKC tested dogs. Some are tremendous bird dogs. Some, they're just overtrained. They're mechanical. They're robotic. Yep. And in the quail fields where I hunt, that dog, while it may test really well, my old Ellie May will find 10 coveys to their one. I can just almost guarantee it.
Well, it's completely different, right? And that's... Yeah. We're trying to create a test that's a perfect analog for what goes on out there, and the fact that you're constructing it as humans means it won't be the same.
Yeah, and Brent and I had this discussion last week, but it's his opinion, and I believe that he's correct, because he's seen it with his Morgan. He brings Morgan to Oklahoma. She still finds birds. She finds grouse and woodcock in the Upper Peninsula all the time. That's her regular hunting. He brings her down to Oklahoma. She finds bobwhite quail and blues and points them, handles them just like she's been doing it her whole life. He said, Ryan, you could bring Ellie Mae to Michigan, give her a couple of days in the grouse woods, she'd be pointing grouse and handling them.
I believe that completely.
Yeah. And never seen a grouse in her life, but I have no doubt that she'd figure it out, especially if I stayed the hell out of her way and let her figure it out.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying bad things about the hunt test system, because it's also a really good way to spend time with your dog and work toward things and enjoy the process in the outdoors. It just doesn't translate.
It introduces new hunters, too. Gives them a mechanism to say, hey, I kind of want to be a bird hunter. I'm going to go buy this puppy, and okay, now I've got a puppy. What the heck do I do with it? Oh, well, hey, the AKC sounds like a really good way to get involved. Let's go over there and do that.
And it was great for us. We had a lot of fun with it. It's just it doesn't all translate to wild bird hunting.
That's right, and that's kind of the leap that you made, that I saw you make. That
oh, yeah.
I think I just have really enjoyed watching your maturation in that regard.
And it's funny. We just happened to meet as I was starting to turn that corner. And understand what this wild bird hunting could be, and trying to work toward it.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen you get new dogs, and I've seen those dogs be successful for you, and I mean, it's been a real pleasure for me, as far as I'm concerned.
And it's fun to have guys like you and Brent and Mike and Bob that I can I can ask questions too, and I'm always amazed. I don't know if I've ever met a bird hunter that knew more than me that wasn't willing to share some knowledge.
Yeah, I'm the same
It's just
way.
a great community.
Yeah, I meet guys all the time that I've never known, and I've got a orange jacket on or a strap vest on. I mean, it's like we're old buddies from way back.
We had a guy in the middle of Missouri when we were coming back from the first trip to Oklahoma. My wife was walking the Brittany's at a McDonald's parking lot, and he came over and just said hi. He was on Upland Journal. We started talking, like you said, right there. Yeah. It's a new friend.
Yeah. Yeah, never. I've really not ever had a bad experience with a bird hunter, and I mean that's one of the reasons I love doing this podcast is because I get to meet guys just like me, mostly guys, some women too. That they just love their dog and they love hunting birds, whether it be scaled quail in Colorado or Tyler up in Michigan chasing sharp-tailed and Huns, or you guys up in the Upper Peninsula. John McGranahan over in Vermont chasing grouse. There's so many parallels, but it's all also different, which has fascinated me.
It's different, but like you said, being willing to put the work in and loving the dogs and loving the outdoors, it already separates them out to be somebody you're probably going to have a lot in common with.
Yeah. And you showed me your gun. What was it, 2 years ago?
Oh.
You're like, oh, hey, check this out. And I swear to God, I think I could shoot around a corner with that son of a gun. That is the most bend I have ever seen in a stock ever.
It was hard to find one with that much.
Explain to me how in the world that happened.
Oh, how much time have you got? So I am not a small person.
Yeah, you're a big boy.
I'm 6'6", about 350 pounds. So I'm not Joe Average when it goes to shooting guns.
Which makes you and I hunt together that much funnier because I'm like a little guy.
Oh, the pictures are awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like tiny and you're like huge. Go ahead, I interrupted. Sorry.
No, you're fine. When I was doing all the training with my dog, doing the hunt tests and the preserve hunts, the engineer in me noticed that when I first started, my shooting percentage was pretty lousy. And then I hit a point after a couple of years where I had just flatlined. Like I wasn't getting better. What I was doing was the same result every time. And I was down in Florida. You've met Joe a couple times, one of my college roommates and good friends. We're hunting with a friend of his, Ken, and we started talking about this. And he said, you need to go get fitted and get a gun that fits you. He said, because you can't possibly shoot that little gun straight because it doesn't fit you. And I was confused, so I read up on it, and then I got a hold of, he lived in Florida. He had flown up to Michigan to a place up in Traverse City called Field Sport where they do shotgun fittings. So I got a hold of them, and I went in there, and I did the fitting first, and he had a try.
What's the guy's name in there that does those fittings?
Brian Belinsky.
I talked to Brian the other day.
Oh, good.
He may be on the podcast.
Oh, if you get him, he'll be a lot of fun.
I'm afraid he'll screw up my shooting, though.
So I'll tell you what. It did screw up my shooting for a little bit, but it got a lot better. I went and saw Brian, and he had a tri-gun, and he just kept adjusting that stock and adjusting the stock until it looked like it was broken. And he's in the shop, and he's down at the end of the room. We've cleared the gun, and you keep picking it up, and he's looking to match your eye right over the rib when you mount the gun. And then we went out and shot at a pattern board, and he gave me my measurements that I needed and sent me home because he said the first thing you need is a set of glasses for shooting and a couple other things. So I got home, and I had these measurements, and I had this gun, and none of it made sense because they were so different. So I'm an engineer. I sat down, and I actually designed a stock to go on my gun, and we 3D printed it. And so I, for about 2 years, walked around in the woods with a Satori over-under with a 3D printed stock on it.
That is great. That is hilarious.
And my shooting got a little better. And things were just falling a little better because when I picked up the gun, I was no longer a half inch to the left of the receiver. My eye was actually lining up over the rib.
Yeah.
And then I went and took a class with them up there, and we went through it and figured out that for a gun that would fit me, the through bolt, like, so most of these shotguns, you take the butt pad off and there's a bolt that goes through the bottom of the stock into the action.
Sure.
I needed enough bend that bolt actually would have to come through the side of the stock to work. And so the only way I could
seen it, I believe.
Yeah, well, the only way I could get a gun that would fit me was to go to a side-by-side that wasn't built with a through bolt, where it was attached in a more traditional manner to the box lock. So Brian and I talked, and he kept his eye out, and I stopped into a shop from time to time, and I came across this AYA that was already bent, not far enough for me, but it was within range. And so I gave him some money and gave him some more money, and they went and had the stock bent to fit me. And I took it out and I started hunting with it, and I couldn't hit a thing.
And there wasn't any money back guarantee either, was there?
No, there wasn't. But where the engineer in me helped is I knew the gun was right, so I just stuck with it. And over the next 6 months, I got used to shooting a side-by-side, got used to the feel and the swing, and my shooting just steadily got better and better and better. And you've seen me shoot. I'm by no means a great shot, but I'm a lot better than I used to be.
Yeah, I've seen you improve in the 3-4 years we've been hunting together. I've seen noticeable improvement.
And, part of that's getting used to it. Part of it's figuring out to turn your feet. There's so many of these little nuanced things that are happening when a covey goes up. You just need repetitions and practice. But I ended up with a very crooked shotgun, but it fits me perfectly.
No, and you're going to agree, but it looks like somebody tried unsuccessfully to break the stock of your shotgun over a 50-cal drum.
Yeah, it looks like a horrible mistake.
It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
But that's how far you got to go from my shoulder to get to my eye and then have everything in line.
That'll be doggone.
I would recommend to anybody to explore the gun fitting process.
Well, and I think what I've seen with you too, and what I see with other people that struggle with their shooting, is that you've relaxed. You're less worried about killing every single bird that you shoot at as much as you're enjoying the whole process. You're enjoying the dog, you're enjoying the flush, and the process of going through the art, for lack of a better term, of shooting a bird. And when you let your brain take over, and not in a kind of formal, stilted way, but in a relaxed, I've done this 1,000 times before kind of way, then you shoot really well.
Yeah, you got to let your primitive brain take over and quit using your thinking brain.
That's right. Yeah. And all that being said, that primitive brain can be most successful, when everything is in line, when you're not constantly having to make physical adjustments to allow that gun to point where you're looking.
Yeah, I could take a right-left crosser any day before I was fitted, but a left-right, because of the way my eye was on the gun, I'd miss almost every time. It's because the way it fit, I had built-in lead going the other direction.
Sure.
Now that primitive brain gets it about the same either direction because your eye's actually where it's supposed to be on the shotgun.
Yeah, and I'm at the point now that I don't even see my shotgun when I shoot birds.
So I tell people, if you see the bead or you see the barrels, you're already in trouble.
Yeah, I don't have a clue. I mean, I'm looking at that bird, and I just know when everything feels right to pull the trigger. And I sure don't shoot as much as I used to. And I'm by no means, an excellent wing shot, but I don't miss nearly as frequently as I used to now. I attribute that to just not maybe caring as much about killing every bird all the time.
Well, I don't want to pump you up too much, but you're definitely in a well above average wing shot.
I've just killed a lot of birds in my day.
A lot of that's
thank you.
Right?
I don't know how true that is. Yeah, and I had to learn to let go.
Yep.
That was the biggest thing for me, was that when I would go out, I mean, I'm kind of a competitive guy. Not that you would ever notice that, but I'm kind of a competitive guy. So if my buddy was going to kill 6 birds, I had, by God, kill 7. And I wasn't going to be happy if I didn't. And now if I kill 2 birds, I'm fine, as long as the guy I'm with is getting some shooting, and as long as my dogs are having a good
Right.
time and finding birds. I mean, you've been with me. You know how I am. I'll shoot them if they get up in front of me, but that really isn't the penultimate reason of what I'm doing out there anymore.
No, most of the time. Now, I do remember you last year telling me I was going to get to shoot a bird, and just as I was going to break the trigger, it crumpled and fell from the sky.
I might have done that on purpose.
You were laughing pretty stinking hard though when it happened, and we both laughed for several minutes.
Yeah, I do that to Jason on occasion. Oh, it pisses him off. He's just like, damn it, Reddick.
Oh,
About the time he's going to pull the trigger, I shoot it. I'm just like, sorry, not
yeah,
really.
you have impeccable timing because I was just starting to put pressure on the trigger when that bird folded, and I realized what had happened.
You looked at me, and I probably had that grin on my face.
You did. You had that special eating grin there.
Yeah, that's funny. Oh, I still like to shoot a bird, and that competitiveness comes out in me. Strangely enough, Pike brings it out in me about as bad as anybody because he's so hyper, um, competitive. Hell, I
Yep.
get with him. By the end of the day, I'm counting my birds when I hardly ever count my birds.
But that's what makes him good at what he does too, because he pushes that extra mile. He goes over that extra hill.
Yeah, he does. He wants to be the guy at the end of the day that's seen the most coveys and killed the most birds.
Well, everything you were talking earlier too about people who are new to the sport. I would tell them too, you just got to relax and be patient with your shooting on birds because the first time something alive gets up in front of you, it's a lot different than a clay pigeon.
Yeah.
And I watched my wife, the very first rooster that went up at the preserve, you could just watch all the programming short circuit in her brain. That thing was cackling. She just stood there and watched it fly away, and she had a great time, but it's like there's a lot going on when a bird goes up.
There is. Yeah, my dad and I were watching some video today of the hunt in Minnesota that I was with Brent, and I caught some pretty good video of some woodcock flushing. Well, I'm in full speed as I'm walking through the woods, and you can hear the beepers going. And then when I get in close, right before the bird flushes, I slow the video down to 10% of live speed. And so that woodcock's coming up slow, flying through the opening right in front of me. You see my shotgun swinging up, and then, of course, half the time, or a third of the time anyway, I miss. And my old man today, he was like, well, hell, I could have shot that bird 3 times. It's like, yeah, Dad, that's at 10% speed.
That happens so fast in the grouse and woodcock woods. It's like you blinked and it was over.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, it happened a little quicker than that.
Oh yeah.
But,
well, there's a cadence though, right? And we talk about you've been shooting these quail for so many years, and we've taken longer to get up to speed on them. From the time you hear those wing beats, there's a cadence that's moving your feet and moving your body, and it takes some practice. You don't just automatically know how to do it.
That's right. And it's a feel thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, now you realize, and of course, a lot of guys at a certain point, they come to the understanding that they really have more time to get the gun into action and make the shot than what they really feel like they have initially.
Well, and Belinsky was hammering that into me when I was taking the classes. The shot's going 1,200 feet per second, and that bird's at best doing 20 miles an hour. You've got a moment.
Oh yeah, you do. You really do. And that was the thing that I had to get over, was the drive to just blow them up 5 feet from me instead of taking a deep breath and letting that rhythm kind of drive my actions in a way that is more primitive brain than thought process.
Somewhere someone told me that back when I think when it was Churchill or those guys that were doing it back when, they would recite to themselves, God save the Queen.
And then shoot.
Yeah, and you're breaking the trigger at the end of Queen.
No, we don't.
And it just kind of sets a rhythm and a timing, and that actually did help me with my shooting, to just get a 1, 2, 3 feeling before you pull the trigger.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. I had never heard that, but to have some cadence in your mind, whether it be some, snarky saying or something that just counting to 3, I could see where that would really benefit a lot of guys, especially pheasant hunters. I mean, Those
It
pheasant
helped
are
me a lot.
not moving that fast.
No, they look fast, but they're not.
Yeah, that's really neat. I'd never heard that, Ben.
I wish I could give you the source, but I just remember reading it or somebody telling me, recite that to yourself right when you hear the wings, and it just slows things down and gives it a rhythm.
You and I are going to have to go on a driven shoot.
Oh, yeah. I would love to do that someday.
That sounds like a lot of fun. There's some places I know of I've read of at least one place in, I think, Idaho, where they're doing driven shooting.
And they're doing the classic driven shoot with
Mm-hmm.
beaters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and they, of course, put out pheasants.
Right.
That would maybe be doable, going to Idaho and shooting some driven pheasant. That sound like fun.
It does. I don't know if they make shooting breaks in my size, so this could be a problem.
Yeah, it could be. Could be. That's funny. I hadn't thought about that.
The tweed hat might be a problem, too.
Yeah. No, you look funny in a tweed hat.
I look funny anyway.
Oh, goodness. So, we talked about having dogs, and we've talked about the shooting aspect of kind of breaking into wild birds. And you've kind of gone through the process that you relied on to get started in that. And I would tell you, Ben, you are, in fact, a wild bird upland hunter. There's no doubt.
I still aspire to be, so it's good to hear that I'm going the right direction.
Yeah, I think you're there, buddy. Is there any other things as far as advice that you think would be beneficial for somebody just getting started in the sport to kind of help point them in the right direction?
I think you need mentors, and I don't know if we've already covered this, but the only reason, if I am a wild bird hunter now, which I feel like I'm getting close, it's because of the people I met and they helped me along the way. This is really hard to do by yourself.
Yeah.
You try to read a book and train a dog. I mean, I started with, is it Walter's book, Gun Dog?
I have a copy.
Great starting point. But every dog's different. And it turns out that the methods for each of my 3 dogs are different. And somebody who's been through 3 or 4 dogs can look at you and go, I think I know what this dog needs. And so find mentors. And, I had a shooting coach, a shooting mentor that I worked with. I had a guy that was helping me train. I've got you and Brent and these other wild bird hunters that are just giving me the opportunities to go try things. I mean, the day Brent called me and asked me if I wanted to get on a quail lease in Oklahoma, I thought he was nuts.
He is.
He is. But then I went home and thought about it and talked to a couple of my buddies, and my buddies said, you don't want to do that. And I looked at my wife and said, this is just, we got to try this. And we've been hooked ever since.
Oh, yeah, I love having you guys come down. And we're going to have a good year this year, buddy. We're gonna knock them dead in November.
I hope so. Did you see Facebook, right? I saw something, Rodney said they had a fire go through the area there, northeast of town.
Yeah, it's not horrible.
Okay, everybody's okay?
Oh, yeah, and it didn't get to town, but it did burn part of the town lease up. But it'll, yeah, probably 150 acres, not enough to make a huge difference.
Good.
And that area will be really good next year after everything gets green. That'll be good bird hunting a year from now. So.
I'll tell you what, there's another lesson I've learned, Ryan, is fire is a good thing for habitat, and clear cutting up here. Everybody talks about saving the big trees, but they all forget that all the critters live in the little trees.
Yeah, and patience. Nature takes time. Patience is one of the things I've learned through the years. And God, it's hard for me. I mean, you've been in the field with me. I'm constantly driving. I want to go.
Oh yeah.
And so that patience is hard for me.
I've been looking for a picture. There's a spot near where I've been hunting with my college buddies now for 5 or 6 years that was cut, I believe, in 2012. So in Michigan, they take selective chunks of aspen and they cut them down and let it regenerate.
Sure.
And when we first started hunting there, it looked like a barren wasteland, right? It just looked flat. And the classic picture that they'll show you for habitat that say, this is horrible, they cut down all the trees. Well, here we are now, 6 years later. Those aspens are, between thumb diameter and wrist diameter. And we walked through there. We put up multiple woodcock and several grouse, and you could just tell things are living there now.
That's cool.
Yeah, they took a mature forest that didn't have much living in it, cut part of it down, it's regenerated, and now it's just full of life. And the same thing happens out there with fire.
And I mean, that's the mantra at the Rough Grouse Society banquet. You know, they were talking about healthy forests.
Yeah.
And the fact that a variety of different age is beneficial to game animals and the forest as a whole.
And songbirds and every other living thing.
And, you know, you were talking about mentors. Places like the Rough Grouse Society, Quail Forever, Pheasants Forever, conservation groups, that's a great place to meet bird hunters.
If you didn't know anybody, that's where I'd start. I mean, that's where I met Brent and several of these other guys, is just start going to meetings and meet some people. They're going to have like-minded interests.
Yeah, and the same way with the hunt test, the hunter organizations.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great place to meet people.
And we've met a lot of people, and we've got a lot of good friends now that all came through those organizations and the people we met through those people.
And don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask somebody to, you know, take you and show you what they're doing. Because, I mean, I love that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that has become probably one of my favorite things about bird hunting. And I still like to go, like, by myself, just me and the dogs, and go. And I always shoot better. My dogs always work better when it's just the three of us. So there's something about that time in the woods or on the prairie that when you're alone with your dogs that I still really treasure.
Absolutely. I like them both.
Yeah, but I like going with guys, you know, having that running chatter constantly going while the dogs work and catching up. And, you know, it's a real social sport. It can be anyway.
Oh, it is. And it's funny, isn't it? It's solitary sometimes when it's just you, but it's very social when you're out with your buddies. And especially if you're doing a camp or you're all staying someplace and there's an evening dinner and stories and a couple beverages and taking care of the dogs. It's a good time.
And good food. You tell
Almost
your
every
wife
time.
to bring me one of them breakfast casseroles that she makes. I'm anxious.
You think I should be putting on the list for early November?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It looks like we're going to have a good year here in Oklahoma. So there's going to be birds to shoot. I'm feeling pretty positive about things.
Either way, whether it's great numbers or not, I'm still going to have 3 trips out there. I'm going to see people I really enjoy, and I'm going to have a great time.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, Ben, I think our hour's about up. I've really enjoyed talking to you about being an adult onset bird hunter, and I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. You have a wonderful evening, buddy.
You too, Ryan. Thank you very much.
I don't know about you, but I'm crossing. She's going to be in this thing right here. You got her? Yeah. God damn it, I missed it.